It's February 9th, 2001. A fishing vessel is cutting through the waves 9 miles south of Oahu, Hawaii. On board are 35 individuals, including 13 students, 2 teachers, and 20 crew. This is a Japanese training vessel, designed to instruct high school students looking to enter the fishing trade. And she's currently on day 33 of a planned 77-day voyage from Ehime, Japan. But unbeknownst to the crew on board, a training exercise is taking place deep beneath the surface. The USS Greeneville is a fast attack submarine. And on board, pressure, miscommunication, and technical difficulties have been building for hours. But this is not a regular training day. Also on board are 12 civilians, lucky enough to be selected for this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. But little do they know, they are just moments away from a maritime disaster. Commissioned in 1999, the Ehime Maru was built in the port city of Ehime, Japan. She is a steel-hulled training vessel measuring 190 feet long, designed to carry students, instructors and crew on extended trips at sea. On January 10, 2001, she leaves port on her annual deep-sea voyage. The route would take the crew on a 7,500 nautical mile loop across the Pacific. Over the course of the trip, the students would learn about navigation, engineering, and the various fishing techniques used by the Japanese fleet. 30 days into her trip, as the Ehime Maru approaches Hawaii, she encounters a problem. The onboard air conditioning has stopped working. Below deck, temperatures begin to climb, and soon they are unbearable. The crew tries their best to fix the broken unit, but after multiple failed attempts, the vessel sets a course for Honolulu. She arrives on February 8th, and after a quick repair, is fit to depart the next day. It's a calm, clear morning as the captain pulls away from the dock. He sets a course for fishing grounds 300 miles south of Pearl Harbor. 9 miles into the passage, Captain Onishi has no idea that the waters they have just entered are frequently used for US Navy submarine exercises. These are not restricted waters, and commercial vessels transit the area every day. The route was one they had travelled in the past, and for all on board, it was just another routine morning. Back in Hawaii, another training exercise was taking place. The USS Greeneville is a nuclear-powered Los Angeles fast attack submarine. She is 362 feet long, with 106 crew on board. But today, her mission is different. She is joined by 16 civilians as part of a public outreach effort designed to show guests what life is like on a US submarine. For the Greeneville's crew, the timeline is tight, and many are skeptical of their ability to cover everything by the scheduled 3 p.m. return. Some crew members quietly share their doubts, but no one challenges the plan. Shortly into the exercise, a sonar operator raises a concern. The sonar repeater in the control room isn't working. Known as the AVSDU, the screen mirrors information exactly as it appears in the dedicated sonar room to those in the control room. Without it, officers can't monitor nearby contacts at a glance. The commanding officer is informed and proposes a solution. Crew members will walk back and forth between the control and sonar rooms to check for contacts manually. This is now standard operating procedure for the day. Then, just before 12:45 p.m, sonar operators detect 2 surface contacts. These are designated as Sierra 12 and Sierra 13. Sierra 12 is to the northwest, moving away. The other is bearing 358 degrees, only 2 degrees short of being straight ahead. For the crew, passive sonar provides bearing, but not range. Estimating distance and speed takes time. Right now, the signal-to-noise ratio is low, and the bearing on Sierra 13 remains nearly constant. It is assessed as distant and not an immediate priority. What no one realises is that as the Greeneville alters course, Sierra 13 is continuing steadily south. The bearing hasn't shifted because both vessels are now on a direct course towards each other. At 1:10 p.m, all 16 visitors are called to the control room. For the next demonstration, the submarine will perform a number of sharp dives and steep ascents, known as angles and dangles. As the submarine moves rapidly through the water, it generates turbulence. This noise floods the hydrophones, and for 6 minutes, the sonar operators are blind. Even as self-noise increases, operators continuously update what's known as the contact evaluation plot, the submarine's digital map of every known vessel in the area. But there's a problem. The commanding officer is distracted by civilian visitors in the control room. As he engages them in conversation, critical contact information is not fully updated, and the tactical picture begins to slip. 20 minutes later, at 1:31 p.m, the captain orders the submarine to periscope depth. Protocol calls for an 8-minute time window to allow for instrument checks, contact confirmation, and a formal briefing. On this occasion, the captain gives the order to complete all of these tasks within a 5-minute window. The officer of the deck would later testify that he found the request unusual, but at the time, he says nothing. Instead, he prioritizes critical steps, but there was no formal briefing, no accurate range estimates, and Sierra 13 still hasn't moved. Then another critical step is rushed. The submarine must now perform a standard turn to check blind spots. Navy procedures require holding each leg of the turn for 3 minutes. This allows enough time for sonar operators to accurately log any contacts. On this occasion, the captain allows 20 seconds. Once complete, the sonar operator updates his position for Sierra 13. The range is now confirmed at 4,000 yards. Close enough that standing orders require an immediate report to the coning officer in charge of the ship's movements, but the report doesn't come. A few minutes later, the Greeneville returns to periscope depth. The commanding officer takes the periscope and searches towards the bearings where he believes Sierra 13 should be. He sees the island of Oahu in the distance, an aeroplane taking off, and haze on the horizon, but no ship. The Ehime Maru is now 2,315 yards, or just over 1 mile away, and bearing almost directly ahead. Her light hull is lost in the white waves, and her narrow bow is a tiny sliver in the distance. As the sub descends, the officer of the deck orders a course back towards Pearl Harbor. Then he announces to the guests that they are about to begin the final maneuver of the day, an emergency blow of the main ballast tanks, otherwise known as an EMBT. The ballast tanks control the submarine's buoyancy. To dive, they fill with seawater, adding weight. To resurface, that water is forced out with compressed air. In an emergency, this process can be done in seconds. The result is a sudden, high-speed ascent towards the surface. Normally reserved for combat, today it's part of the demonstration. In preparation, civilians are placed at various controls. One at the helm, one at the air valves, one at the diving alarm. Crew members supervise each station, but guests have their hands on the equipment. At 1:42 p.m, the EMBT alarm sounds. High-pressure air begins dumping seawater from the main ballast tanks. At a depth of 400 feet, the submarine's bow now tilts upwards and it begins to rise rapidly towards the surface. The crew keeps a close eye on the controls, but they are now lacking critical information, and as the submarine accelerates through the water, they pass a point of no return. On the surface, the crew of the Ehime Maru are preparing their fishing lines. Then, without warning, all hell breaks loose. Out of nowhere, the bow of the submarine explodes through the surface. Before the crew of the Ehime Maru can react, there was a huge impact as the Greeneville's reinforced rudder tears into the fishing vessel's hull. It rips through the student lounge, through the engine room and the control spaces. The ship's power instantly goes down, and then the emergency backup fails. Water and diesel pour through the open doors, filling the ship's interior. Captain Onishi tries the radio, but it's dead. He clambers across the wheelhouse and activates the ship's EPIRB. In a last-ditch effort, students and crew climb the ladder to the pilot house roof, but the waves quickly sweep them into the ocean. And in less than 10 minutes, the Ehime Maru is completely gone. The crew of the Greeneville is stunned by the sound of the massive impact. In complete confusion, they perform a visual sweep of the area, and the officer in charge can't believe what he sees. Debris, oil, life rafts and survivors in the water. A collision report is transmitted to the US Pacific Fleet headquarters at Pearl Harbor. Coast Guard assets are dispatched, including a helicopter from Barbers Point and rescue boats from Honolulu. On the surface, a survivor spots the submarine's sail and shouts towards the crew. Then, at close to 2:30 p.m, 45 minutes after the impact, help arrives in the form of an MH-65 Dolphin helicopter, shortly followed by a Coast Guard cutter, and the survivors are pulled from the water. In total, 9 lives are lost in the collision: 4 students, 2 teachers, and 3 crew. The wreck lies at 2,000 feet on the sea floor. At the request of the families, and after initial debate over feasibility, the US Navy agrees to attempt a recovery operation. For 29 days, Navy and Japanese divers work in low visibility. They conduct 526 dives, and the entire salvage operation costs over $60 million. By the end of the search, 8 bodies are recovered. 1 student is never found. After the incident, the Navy announces a public court of inquiry. 3 US admirals preside, and for 2 weeks they hear testimony. A Japanese admiral is invited to observe, but not to vote. The inquiry concludes that the captain of the USS Greeneville bears primary responsibility. He rushed procedures, he failed to complete a full contact analysis, he ordered an emergency surfacing maneuver toward known contacts. A fire control technician is faulted for not reporting that Sierra 13 was within 4,000 yards. The executive officer and members of the watch team are cited for failures in supervision and communication. The captain receives non-judicial punishment and was allowed to retire. The others face administrative action. When there was a delay in issuing a formal apology, the victims' families are furious. They wanted accountability, and what they saw was a system protecting its own. In December 2002, the submarine's captain travels to Japan. He visits the school and places white lilies before the memorial. He reads the names aloud, then bows his head in respect to the lives that were lost. In Hawaii, a memorial now sits in Kaka'ako Waterfront Park. 9 stones bear the names of the lives that were lost. At the centre rests an anchor salvaged from the Ehime Maru. 1 student was never found. Every year, on the anniversary of the accident, his father returns to Hawaii and visits the memorial, where he bows his head 9 times.